Squirtle, Charmander, Bulbasaur. This was like one of the toughest questions of our entire frickin' youth. There were 3 choices, and you could only have one. So everybody remembers their first Pokemon game, and this choice may have been different for some people, but for those of us that started with Red and Blue, for those of us that started at the beginning, there were 3 choices. Charmander, Squirtle, Bulbasaur. And, oh man, look, when I started the game, I walked out into the grass, yada yada. Professor comes and gets you. He brings you in, and then it's like you're picking a main character for the game. There's 3 Pokeballs on the table, and immediately there's this feeling about you when you're a kid and you come to that moment. And I'm telling you, this feeling doesn't go away even today. Even today, I've seen where when the starters are really good, it can be tough to decide exactly what route you want to take. And some people have an affinity. The only thing they do is they pick the water type. They pick the grass type. They pick the fire type. That's the way they are. That's just what they pick. And then some of us tend to pick aesthetically, and then some of us tend to pick the one that we feel is not going to be picked by other people. I don't know if it's our way of standing out or what it is, but it's all very true. It's very real. And some of us will oftentimes, when these new games are coming out and they start introducing the starters, we're already debating and picking who we're going to pick before we even get there. But there was a different feeling about the first game because we didn't know those starters before we got there. I didn't, anyway, and I think a lot of other people were the same way. When we first walked in that room, there were 3 Pokeballs on the table. We had no idea what was in them. So we talk to the professor, and then he tells us, go choose one. We walk over and we click the first one, whichever one you guys went to on whatever side of the table, middle, left, right, whatever. And you click on it, and here's a Bulbasaur. And you're like, okay, well, that's neat, and it gives you a little entry, and then it says, do you want this? And you're like, okay, well, I gotta see the other 2, so no. So then you go over and you see the Squirtle, and you're like, oh, man, that's kind of neat. And then you pick no, and then you go over and you see the Charmander. Now, one of these guys may have grabbed you. And then one of these guys may have not. You may very well look at them aesthetically and decide, okay, no, that's definitely a no. But then the killer about the Kanto starters, at least for me, what I believe, was that all 3 of them were exceptionally good. I can't say that about every generation. I can't say that I went into, well, to be fair, just the next generation, Silver and Gold, I knew right off the bat. And I'm sorry if this is your favorite guy, but this is the way that this works sometimes. I saw the grass and said, nope, no way. No way. So, look, this was a crazy hard choice because it seemed like they were perfect. I wanted all of them. I really did. But then there was this nagging idea that maybe this is how you get Pokemon. I didn't know yet that you went out and you fought them and you caught them. My idea was that maybe, because keep in mind, I had not seen the show. I started in the games on a trip on a frickin' 16-hour drive. It was like 16 or 20-hour drive is what I was about to make with my grandparents. I told you that story before when I picked up the game. So I've got the red version, and I'm in the car, and we're just starting to drive, and we haven't even really gotten out of my town limits necessarily. We're just hitting the interstate, and we're starting to go. And as we're starting to go, I'm sitting there staring, and I'm like, oh, man. So I get to that first part, and I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at all 3, and I'm trying to decide, and this was rough. Well, I had this train of thought And I don't know that I can necessarily be blamed for this. It seemed to make sense in my own mind at the time. I looked at the 3 starters, and I said to myself, okay, I like all 3 of them. I really like this Charmander. And I have a feeling, somehow I knew that evolution was going to be a thing. I had this feeling. I knew right off the bat, somehow, that these 3 things on the table, that Charmander, I knew that it had to become that Charizard thing. And I didn't even know their names yet, but I knew that the dragon that I had bought the game for, the dragon that was sitting there looking me in the face on the cartridge, on the box art, I knew that somehow that lizard thing became that lizard thing. I didn't understand evolution yet. I thought maybe you would get some levels and like you would see them gradually grow up. And I wasn't necessarily far off. That's pretty much what evolution looks like when it's done right. So I had a feeling, and this informed my decision, because right now you're probably thinking I went for Charmander. I didn't. Here's the thing. I accidentally picked my starter. I saw all 3. I liked the turtle. I liked the frog. I liked the lizard. The salamander. I was going to pick the salamander, but then something in my mind told me not to do that. I started thinking, maybe he's on the box art. He's on the cart. I must just get him. This must be a first choice, and later on, I must get him. I mean, he's the face of the game, right? He's the face of the game. Hell, when I turned the game on, aside from that intro where the 2 Pokemon fight, the first Pokemon I see at the start screen is him standing there with the Pokeball, and there's a Charmander standing next to him, and I'm like, that's the intro screen. I mean, that's right there. That proves it, that I must just get him at some point. So what I pick right now doesn't mean I won't get him later, and I don't need 2 of the same guy. And I remember this, going through this in my head, so I made a decision to pick a different guy. And I did. I picked Bulbasaur. And I named it Cedar. I remember that. I don't remember why I named it Cedar, and I didn't even know that later on it ended up getting Leech Seed, and it ended up making a ridiculous amount of sense that was the name I gave it. But you know what? I never got a Charmander. Of course, because in the original Red and Blue, unless you found a way to cheat or trade, that was it. You got one of the starters, and the one you picked was the one that ran through the whole game with you, unless you put it in the box or whatever. But I did not. Man, I'm glad I made this mistake. Because it was a mistake. Originally, I know that if my train of thought had not taken me where it took me, without a doubt, I would have picked Charmander. But I didn't. Because I swore, I felt it in my bones, that I was just going to get that guy automatically. I mean, he's on the cover. He's on the cover. He's a guarantee. But he wasn't a guarantee, and I picked Bulbasaur. And you know what? To this day, I don't really regret that. Because he turned out... There's something about the first Pokemon that you ever have that sticks with you forever. Whatever Pokemon you picked, that starter that gets you into the franchise holds a special place with every single one of us. And Bulbasaur is no different. I love Bulbasaur. He's what I started the series with. And I love him to death. I love that the seed sprouts on his back and he goes from being basically a thick frog thing to being like a dinosaur, because he becomes like a bigger frog, and then he becomes a straight up frickin' extinct level dinosaur, and he has that big tree that's on his back, and he's very dependable. He saved my ass over and over and over and over and over. I mean, things like Razor Leaf were super strong. He could do Earthquake. So later on, Fire Guys would show up, and the Fire Guys, I'd just be like, fuck you, bam, and I'd stomp on the ground and take him out. He had the lead. I remember during the course of the run, I ended up sticking with Razor Leaf until I got I got to the point where I got Giga Drain, and then I took all the PP up that I could possibly find in the game, and I just kept giving it to him to take that move up. So I had Mega Drain, I had Sleep Powder, and I had Leech Seed. So I would, like, if I was running into trouble, I would put them to sleep and then seed them. And then I could switch him out and put in somebody that was lower life, and while they were sleeping, I could heal that guy and peck at them and then get my guys that were lower levels to go up in levels. Like, I loved Bulbasaur. And to this day, I still do. And I'm happy that I made this incorrect decision. I can't remember what my first team was when I actually beat the first game. It was too long ago. But I remember Bulbasaur. And to this day, I have him on my shelves. Like, I have little figures of him, and anytime I have a chance at any game when they introduce a Bulbasaur, I will go out of my way to get one. Like when they did the Let's Go Pikachu that they just did recently, I purposely went to the woods and knew I was already... I didn't know for sure. I was walking around the woods, and then I saw one, and I couldn't get to him. I went to run at him, and then a frickin' Caterpie got in my way, and then I ended up smashing the Caterpie, and then he was gone, and I was like, okay, well, I know there's a Bulbasaur in these woods, and I walked around that forest for like an hour. I think it was an hour. It was a little over an hour, and my daughter was playing the game at the same time, and she just kind of moved on, because why wait forever? And I understand that mentality, because I had that mentality when I was a kid. When I was a kid, one of the reasons Bulbasaur was such a big deal was because I ran through the game. I couldn't wait to get to the next spot, the next gym, the next big deal. And as I ran and ran and ran, the most dependable guy on my team, because I was a kid and I wasn't switching people out enough and I wasn't going through the level grinding process that I should have been doing, my Bulbasaur was a monster, but the rest of my stuff was trying to play catch-up. So he was always about 10 levels ahead of everybody else. And then I would find an area or whatever, and I'd be like, okay, well, I need to work on these guys. So I'd switch him out to the back or whatever, or I'd do a thing like I was talking about. I would sleep the guy, seed the guy, and then switch out to the dude that I needed to get some experience. And I was kind of doing my experience that way. I do remember the second guy on my team when I beat the game. It was Gyarados. I'm going to be coming back in here to do a dream team. If I lived in the Pokemon universe, what would the dream team be that followed me down whatever region I happen to live in? And you know what? Just for nostalgia purposes, I wouldn't lock down Pokemon to a region, but if I had to live in a certain place, maybe my quest starts in the Kanto region, because that's where it started when I started these games in the first place. And a lot of people are going to pick Johto because, let's face it, Gold and Silver were superior games to Red and Blue. They really were. But I started in Kanto, so I'd probably start there, beat that league, and then move over to Johto and then travel from there. But that's not important. This was my first choice, guys. This was the Pokemon that started it all. This was the one that meant something. This was the one that drove me to the future of my Pokemon stuff. And I'm telling you guys, to this day, I don't regret this choice. What was your starter? I'm curious. I really am, because we all had a starter, and not all of us started in the same area, and some people had a tough time choosing, and some people it was a very easy choice. But I'm telling you, the first time you encounter those three Pokemon, unless one really jumps out at you, which depending on the game, that's a tough choice, because I also think Black and White have very, very, very solid starters. I like all three of them, and I like okay, gold and silver I don't. So maybe that's another thing that I can do. I'm not necessarily a Pokemon channel, but Pokemon's a huge fandom and I am into it. So maybe the next couple of videos I'll really dive into this kind of stuff. Maybe I'll rate the starters and put them in order or whatever from different versions or whatnot. But anyways, guys, that was that. This video has gone on way long enough. We're at like 16 minutes just talking about what my starter was. My starter was Bulbasaur, and I do not regret that choice at all. I'm going to get out of here.
I have spoken. Take what you will from it.